So we're going to do a 20-minute deep hamstring stretch class, and this class has been requested several times by people who are very athletic and the hamstrings get very, very tight. And so this is just a way, if you're in sports or you're a runner or you do some stretches beforehand, sometimes the real stretching that can open the hamstrings gets overlooked. So it becomes a quick, like, all right, do a little bit of this, okay, ready to go. So if you really do want to increase your hamstring length and really find a new level of flexibility, this is a great class for you. You can do this class over and over and over again. You can do these stretches at any time. This is all going to be on the floor. So we're going to start actually in seated staff pose. So go ahead and, oh, by the way, if you do have props available, a block and a strap is great. If you do have tight hamstrings for this class, if you don't have a strap, you can always use a towel or a sheet or a shirt. So staff pose, bring the legs long on your mat, and we want to just feel the sitting bones on the floor. So you can just rock back and forth and try and avoid just yanking the flesh out of the way, which is sometimes mentioned in yoga classes because that can add a little extra strain. So you do want to feel the sitting bones ground onto the floor, but you don't need to yank everything away. Sit up nice and tall. So we really want to work. Staff pose doesn't look like much at first, but it is a very active pose. This might already feel like a stretch in the hamstrings. You want to stay really active, toes facing up toward the ceiling, and the quads are engaged. So we're not just sitting here like so, we're active, okay? Already the stretch is happening. We're building a little bit of strength and heat in the legs. We want to have the shoulders aligned over the hips, the head in line with the spine, okay? We can rest the hands on the legs, but if this feels like a lot of work for you or the hamstrings are tight, you can always have the hands resting on the floor to support you, maybe coming up onto the fingertips. And we're just going to take 5 more breaths here. So close your eyes if they aren't already and really focus in on long, slow, deep inhales and exhales. Three more breaths. Last inhale here and exhale here. From staff pose, we're going to move into Paschimottanasana or seated forward fold. If you have tight hamstrings and have a strap, this might be a great place for a strap. You can take the strap and you can place it around the bottoms of your feet. We're going to sit upright in the spine again, lift the arms up overhead to find some length here. And then in this first variation of the pose, we're actually going to hinge forward at the hips and keep the head in line with the spine. Nice flat back, reaching the arms forward as far as possible. Maybe that means coming onto the strap and staying upright like this, okay? So instead of just rounding forward and hanging out, which we will do a little bit of, I want you to keep that spine long. Maybe if the hands reach the feet, you can take hold of the outsides of the feet. You can take the peace fingers around the big toes, okay? So continue to lengthen the forehead toward the toes and stay active in the legs and in the breath, okay? This is where we increase our flexibility, is we hold the pose, and with each exhale, maybe we go a little bit deeper into the pose. Maybe it's so small a movement that you can't see it, but see if you can feel it in your body. And the longer you practice this pose, the length of time, and over time, you will notice increased flexibility in your hamstrings. Again, stay active in the quads. And this helps when the quads are active, it helps the hamstrings open, and it keeps the hamstrings safe from overstretching. 3 more breaths here. And again, if the hamstrings are tight and you're upright, maybe it means just a little bit more movement forward. Okay, from wherever you are, we're going to take 3 breaths in a more passive variation of this pose. So this time we can just round down and just relax the forehead toward the knees. Okay, so a little softer in the spine, but still working the length in the hamstrings. 3 breaths. And release. All right, so we're gonna bring that right leg off to an angle and then bring the left sole of the foot, the sole of the left foot to the right inner thigh. We're gonna face the shoulders towards the right toes. And again, you can use a strap around the foot. So similar to a seated forward fold, we're actually gonna hinge forward at the hips, can reach the hands toward the strap, even if we're upright like this, and this feels like a stretch, this is a great place to start. Okay, so keep that spine nice and long, the head in line with the spine. Try and avoid rounding forward. Instead, try and reach forward. Keep your quadricep, the top of your leg, tightly engaged. Keep your toes active, pointing toward the ceiling or the sky, and take 3 more breaths. And release. We'll switch sides. So bring the left leg to an angle. Toes are going to point straight up. Bring the sole of the right foot to the left inner thigh. Shoulders face the left foot. Arms reach up overhead. And same thing here. We're going to hinge forward and reach. Maybe this is a reach to your strap and you stay like this. If this feels like a stretch, then stay right here with the head in line with the spine, hinging forward, and maybe each exhale brings you a little bit further forward. Again, try and avoid just hunching. If the hamstrings are tight and that means you're up here, that's fine. Maybe each exhale brings you a little bit closer to your toes. And release. All right, from here we're going to make our way to downward facing dog. Downward facing dog is a nice hamstring stretch. Plant your hands, spread your fingers wide, walk your toes back, tuck the toes under, lift the hips high, and release the heels toward the floor. So if the hamstrings are really tight, the knees might start out as very bent. That's fine. Working on a nice flat back, so head in line with the spine, even if that means bending the knees a lot. So if it looks like that, that's fine. As the hamstrings start to open up, we start to press the heels down toward the floor and straighten through the legs. That may take some time. Let's just hold downward facing dog for 3 more breaths. As you look back at your toes, the heels should be disappearing behind the toes. So if your heels are pointed in or out, try and put them in line with your toes so you cannot see your heels. Let the head hang heavy so the neck is loose, there's no tension. Complete the exhale and then look toward your hands and walk your feet toward the front of your mat or toward your hands. Take your feet to hip distance apart and then bend your knees a lot so the torso is going to rest on the quadriceps. So this is going to be more of a spine opener than a hamstring opener. So let your hamstrings feel nice and soft here, okay? So bend your knees as much as needed to make that happen. Maybe we take opposite hand toward opposite elbow and just let the head dangle. So you should feel this nice release in your upper back and your neck. Take 1 more breath in ragdoll. Now we're going to start working into the hamstrings a little bit more here. So you can have, if you have a block and your hamstrings are tight, you can have a block to support your weight. Otherwise, take your hands to the floor and we're just gonna slowly start straightening the legs. It might not even look like much to you if the hamstrings are tight, but try and get active in making that happen. So in ragdoll, we're just hanging out and that's great. And in forward fold, we wanna start to straighten those legs nice and slow. And again, if the hamstrings are tight and you are working towards straight legs, you can come up on your block and have that support there, even at the highest level, and start working towards straight legs. Take one more breath here. All right, so with straight legs, if you have a block and need it, take your hands to the block or to the floor. We're gonna come up to monkey pose. So it's a halfway lift, a flat back. So head is in line with the spine. Once again, we're working towards straight legs. This is probably gonna feel like quite a bit of a stretch if the hamstrings are tight, but just work in that direction. Take one more breath here in monkey pose. As we exhale, come all the way down to a forward fold. Plant your hands on the floor and step back to downward facing dog. See, already my hamstrings feel quite a bit different. Holding those poses should feel quite a bit of a difference with the length of time. So let's take your right leg and lift it up off the floor, straight out behind. Hold here, make sure all 5 toes are pointed down toward the floor. So right now we're using our hamstring strength to lift the leg. So try and avoid just using your glute, but really activate your hamstring. Lift that leg a little bit higher, but keep your 2 hips in one line, the toes pointed down. And then we're gonna bring our knee toward our nose and we're gonna step our foot in between our hands. Okay, and go ahead and take that left knee down toward the floor. We're gonna take 2 variations of half splits pose here. So first variation, we're just gonna take the left hip right over the left knee and we're working toward a straight right leg. Okay, and again, tight hamstring, it might just look like this. We're working in this direction. So even if your knee is bent, just slowly start to straighten it, even if you can't even see the stretch happening. Work with the breath, take 3 more breaths here in this variation of half splits pose. Okay, from here, keep breathing and flex your toes back towards your face. You're gonna feel a stretch in your Achilles tendon, your calf, and again, your hamstring is gonna be a little bit of a variation on that first stretch. And then go ahead and point your toes back down toward the floor. And then second variation, take your left foot flat to the floor and bring your left hip towards your left heel. Okay, so this is second variation of half splits pose. Again, if the hamstring's tight, one option here, you can sit on a block if that feels better. Okay, otherwise you can sit right on your heel. And then just like we did in forward fold, we want the spine nice and long. You can have the hands here for support. If this feels like a stretch, then hang out here, okay? If you're feeling like, all right, I think I can go a little bit further, just start to hinge forward and then walk your hands forward. Walk your hands forward and just come to that place where you're like, that's enough. And I need to stop here and we're gonna hold it for 3 more breaths. And release. Go ahead and just cross over your ankles and come back to downward facing dog. Now lift your left leg off the floor. Look back at your toes. Your toes should be pointed down. So instead of just throwing that leg up like so, you want to keep your 2 hips in one line and your 5 toes pointed down. Because I really want you to use your hamstring to lift your leg a little bit higher. It might not even be visible to your eye, but I want you to feel it as you lift, lift, lift. So just building a little bit of strength in that hamstring, and then we'll stretch it. So bring your left knee towards your nose and then step your left foot in between your hands for low lunge. Even if you have to drag that foot forward, with the hands. Bring it all the way forward so your left knee is right over your left ankle in low lunge. And from here, we'll take the 2 variations of half splits. So take your right knee to the floor, right hip over right knee, and start to straighten through the left leg. Again, it might not even look like much of a stretch in a forward fold, but try and work it with the breath. So with each exhale, maybe coming a little bit further forward. And we're gonna hold the pose, half splits pose. Now for the next couple of breaths, start to flex your toes backwards and feel the difference in the stretch. Achilles tendon, calf, hamstring. Another breath here. And then bring your left hip toward your left heel, top of the foot flat to the floor, and go ahead and sit on your foot. If this is too much, place a block underneath and sit on a block. Okay, and same thing, we want to stay nice and upright in the spine, so find that alignment with the shoulders over the hips. You might be right here, or you might be able to start walking your hands forward just a little bit at a time. And keep coming forward. And just hold here for a couple more breaths. And come all the way back up. Good. And then just cross over your ankles and come back to downward facing dog. One more breath in downward facing dog. And release down onto the knees. Cross over your ankles and come to a seat. Okay, we're gonna take seated straddle splits and then we'll come down onto our backs. So separate both legs nice and wide as you can. And the main focus here, if you do this stretch in sports or on your own or whatever, oftentimes this stretch just kind of becomes a lazy in the legs, I'm gonna work on the stretch. So we really wanna be mindful about staying active in the legs. So first thing we need to do is point all 10 toes straight up, and we wanna flex them back toward our knees. Knees point straight up toward the ceiling. So if you can't get this alignment in a nice wide straddle, bring the legs closer together as much as you need to find this position in your legs. So active in the quads, the tops of your legs, flex them, so much so that you could even maybe see your heel lift off the floor for a moment. Same thing as in staff pose. If this feels like a stretch in the hamstrings, the inner thighs, use your hands behind you so you can stay upright. Use those arms for support. If you're like, all right, I think I can go a little bit further, you can take your hands in front of you, but work again toward the long, flat spine as you come forward. So maybe you stay here, maybe you take a step forward. Work with the breath. Again, it might not even be visible as you hold the pose and make those tiny little movements. But as you move forward, don't forget toes, knees, quads. Let's take 3 more breaths. Wherever you are, if you need to walk your hands back up or bring your hands forward, take a hold of your legs and then bring them back to center. Bend both of your knees, or bend both of your legs so that your knees are straight up, and let's come down onto your back. So if you have a strap or a similar prop, go ahead and have that handy, maybe a loop in the strap, or you can use the strap lengthwise. All right, so variation number 1 on this hamstring stretch. We're gonna keep that left leg bent, foot flat to the floor, and then we're gonna reach that right leg straight up toward the sky or the ceiling. Okay, so you have a couple options. You can take your strap, put it around your foot, the loop, or you can just put it lengthwise around your foot, Or if you don't have a strap and you're feeling like you can use your hands to walk up the back of your leg, you can start at your hamstring and then start to walk up toward the calf, toward the ankle. Maybe you can hold the big toe with your peace fingers, okay? All right, so here's variation number 1. If this feels like a big stretch, and again, I just want to show you, if you've got a strap and your hamstring's really tight and your leg is out here, that's fine, no worries. We're just working in this direction, okay? Now, option number 2, so stay here and hold this stretch. Don't forget to stay active in your leg. If you want to take it one step further, you can extend your left leg long on the mat. You're going to feel it increase the stretch right away in the hamstring. We're going to take this into the inner thighs now. So you're either holding onto your toe or you're holding onto your strap. Maybe your foot's all the way down here. That's fine too. Okay, wherever you are is fine. Bring your left arm to the left, place your palm face down on the floor, and then open your right leg to the right. Okay, so we really want to take our focus onto keeping your left shoulder and your left hip flat to the floor. So this is going to take some strength in your core. So again, try and avoid the weight of the leg flinging your body to the side, all right? So if that means that you need to bring your leg a little bit further back up to center to keep your left shoulder and left hip on the floor, go ahead and make that adjustment. And come back towards center, and we're going to switch sides. So take the right foot flat to the floor, knee is going to face up, extend your left leg up toward the sky. So go ahead and either take your strap around your foot, the loop around the foot, the hands around the hamstring, starting to walk back up the back of the leg, or your peace fingers around your big toe. All of these are great options. Now, option number 2, so you can stay right here if this is working for you. And again, if the leg is way out here because you can't bring the leg further in, that's fine. Just work with the breath and work with the hands or the strap to just slowly make that movement. Okay? Now, option number 2 is to extend the right leg long on the mat. Okay, we're going to take it into the inner thigh now. So either holding onto your strap, holding onto your ankle, or holding onto your toe. Start to release the left leg to the left, right arm to the right. Now, if you're rolling off in that right shoulder and right hip or hiking up, then come back towards center. So it's going to take a little bit of strength, a little bit of work just to keep that hip and that shoulder on the floor. And then come back to center from wherever you are. Maybe you're still at center, that's fine. And we're gonna just bend both legs. We're gonna come into happy baby pose, a little bit of a hamstring stretch as well. So you're gonna actually lift both feet off the floor, the knees will separate. We're working the thighs toward parallel with the floor. It's okay if they're not there yet. If the hamstrings are super tight and you need to hold on to the backs of the thighs, that's fine. Or you can hold on to your ankles, or maybe you take your hands around the outer edges of your feet, or maybe you take your peace fingers around your big toes. Wherever you are though, we're working toward getting the spine flat to the floor. So if grabbing onto the toes means that you're rounding up like this, back off a little bit so you can get your tailbone and your low back pressed down toward the floor. Take another couple breaths here in happy baby pose. And bring your knees into your chest. Nice little squeeze. And feel free to take a Shavasana if you'd like. I'm going to just roll up to a seat here. So I'll do a second short hamstring class and post it a little bit later. This is a great place to start really focused hamstring stretches. Down dogs in that class are optional if you just want to stay on the floor, but down dog, if you do have tight hamstrings, is a good hamstring stretch as well. So just if you have time and you start to really learn these poses and you really want to focus on increasing your hamstring flexibility, and you're sitting watching a show at night, just take your seated forward fold on the floor, okay? You just start working it. The longer you can hold these poses, the closer you're gonna come to making progress in the fold or just in the length of the hamstrings or in the comfort of the pose. So hang in there and really take your time, work with the breath, work with the body. And again, as always, don't take it to a place where you're like, ouch, that hurts. Okay, you want to feel a stretch, maybe a little discomfort, gaining flexibility, but never pain, okay? Because you don't want to tear or overstretch anything. Thank you so much for joining me today. Namaste.